Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. So we've got a lot to talk about in this episode. I'm not doing this one live on Twitch, so there won't be any questions at the end, and it's because I knew I was going to have quite a few things to mention in this video. For one, don't forget this upcoming Friday is the 14-hour broadcast to celebrate 5 years of Final Fantasy XIV. The live letter, which is going to be our Part 2 preview of Patch 4.4, give us the release date, trailer, all that good stuff. That's going to be at 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time this Friday, 11:30 p.m. Eastern. So it's in the evening, America time. So be prepared for that. It's not in the AM, it's in the PM. We'll be doing State of the Realm that Saturday, and both days I will be at PAX West. So I'm going to be basically doing these things once I'm done for the day at PAX West. I will be live streaming with the translation and thoughts from my hotel room on Friday, and I'll even be hosting State of the Realm from the hotel room on Saturday. So that content's going to be coming out later this week, plus we'll have all the usual content that there is covering that. Now, as for my celebrations of 5 years of Final Fantasy XIV, I am planning on putting out a video where I just go over a few memories that I have. I guess I already did kind of like a 5-year-esque video. Did I do one for 5 years? Maybe it was for 4 years. I think the last one I may have actually done was Thanksgiving. I gotta go back and look. But for 5 years of Final Fantasy XIV, I am going to be putting out a video for that as well. You'll see it the same day as you're seeing this, so it's probably already available. And actually, maybe I'll put it out tonight because I'm recording this on Sunday. And that's going to also be letting you know I'll be hosting a 5-year anniversary event of my own where I'm going to be doing a subathon where people can sub and extend the stream. And if we, obviously we go over time there because Wednesday's going to be a busy day for me also, probably a maximum of 14 hours. Then we're probably going to add those remaining hours to future streams, and I'll make sure to actually keep track of all that stuff. It's going to be busy. Busy. Oh, well, Wednesday. Tomorrow's Monday. See, I don't even remember what day it is anymore. That's it. Just days melding together. We're going to be doing things like watching the old World First videos, going over some old memories, revisiting some of my old YouTube videos, doing the actual Rising event because the NPC still hasn't appeared on the North American servers, the Rising Recruiter, so I can actually do this Eureka-esque Calamity Ul'dah thing that is going on that looks pretty cool. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, so this week's going to be busy, and that's it. Before I go on, I'm going to, because of all the announcements at the beginning, I'm going to thank the sponsors at the end of the video. So sponsors, be ready for that, because that's where it'll be. I want to get into the questions, though, since, this intro already took so long. Also, before I answer the question on the screen, if you're going to PAX West, I have a meet and greet Saturday at the Twitch booth at 3 p.m. until 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Well, of course, because it's in Seattle. So if you're going to be at PAX West, nice motorcycle. Come by the Twitch booth around 3 to 4, and you'll find me there, and I'll say hi. And if you want my worthless signature on something, I'll gladly give it to you. But anyway, let's go over to the questions. So question number 1, hello, mister. Hello. Next to 14, what other MMOs are you playing nowadays? Elder Scrolls and Terra seem interesting and PS4 friendly since I don't have a Windows computer. Any recommendations for non-Final Fantasy, massively multiplayer PS4 games, or even mobile games with large communities like Brave Exvius? For mobile games, Opera Omnia is an easy choice. The 4 mobile games are Opera Omnia, Record Keeper, Brave Exvius, and Mobius. Now, of course, if you're into other Square Enix products, you also have Union Cross, you have Star Ocean, Animastesis, or whatever the hell that one is pronounced. So those are mobile game options. For MMOs, for PS4 friendly options, see, as soon as you ask me what MMOs I'm interested in, I'll tell you right now, MapleStory 2 is what I'm looking toward. They actually invited me to an event, which I need to make a video on, but I was waiting to see if there would be a blog post or something so I could just highlight the details on the blog post that were shared with us at the event. That way I make sure I have a source, I have something to link people to, and I make sure I don't miss anything because it was a lot of information all at once. So MapleStory 2 would have been that, but it's not a PS4 game. That's going to be a PC game. I don't really play any MMOs on my PS4. At 14, I don't even play on the PS4. But you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, Elder Scrolls and Terra, if you're looking for another MMO on the PS4, I mean, those are your other best options. Personally, I think Elder Scrolls is probably the better option of the two. But I mean, that's all I can really offer. You've already named the other ones that I probably would have remembered to name. So those. And then MapleStory 2 is the thing I'm looking at. Question number 2. Hey, Mr. Happy, my man. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I got you some tea. Tea? I like coffee. Coffee. Yeah, I mean, tea's fine too, but I prefer coffee. To go with your Pogos grinding is you don't like Red Bull, and I don't like it either, so for some reason, T is good. Back in Realm Reborn, wasn't a big raider, so I always went for the Relic weapon to keep up with the good, to keep up as I couldn't get the raid weapon. Also, they were super shiny and made you feel badass. Nowadays, I'm clearing raids for fun and getting all the gear. However, it feels like the Relic's falling behind the current raid gear as a backup weapon, as Onamos was 350, when 375 was the highest item level. Main question is, do you think they'll go back to the Realm Reborn or Heavensward Relic grinding methods, or come with another idea like Eureka? Seems like a Nexus grinder or light grind 10 times over. Just feels monotonous. Enjoy your week and look forward to the Rising. So the Relic, I would like them to at least go back to having lots of options on progressing with it. You know, that was always kind of my big advantage, or what I perceived as the big advantage with the Relic and the Anima, is, yeah, there was always a most efficient grind method, and that should always be the case. So for example, with Eureka, just grinding on mobs, the fastest way to level, fastest way to get light. It just won't get you the Lauhi Ice or the Pogos Crystals, which really aren't too big of a deal. And then if you want to take the light step slower and the leveling slower, or I guess more, not more methodical, but like less effort, you'll generally go with just Notorious Monsters, Lauhi when it spawns, and then maybe you just keep farming Notorious Monsters, you know, you just chill in town, watch some Netflix or something, and when one spawns, you go do it. Super low effort, but also takes much longer. I think that is sort of like the right approach, but with the old relics, it was like literally everything you were doing could contribute to the weapon. So you felt good just logging in and doing daily tasks because there was this added element to it. Whereas you really have to go out of your way to participate in Eureka. You need to go through a leveling process again. You need to go through looking for other people, you know, that are like-minded and like-leveled like you are. You know, there's not much really in the ways of automatic grouping. You know, again, it's trying to replicate this very old school experience, and it just doesn't, I guess, match what the game itself is supposed to be. And that clash just doesn't work for me. I'd like them to go back to a more Realm Reborn or Heavensward Relic method. I wouldn't mind if there are certain steps that replicate certain things in Eureka, but not to the extent of Eureka. Like, let's say, for example, that instead of making a whole new zone where you have all these rule sets and everything, if you just added, you know, dangerous areas to the existing maps, or if the maps you develop later, you know, have these really high-level areas where your goal is ultimately to, you know, work on these relics. It's better than creating this whole new map and this instance experience where you have to worry about this new leveling system and the Magia board and all these factors that really should be interesting but aren't. You know, if you stick to what the core game is good at and just apply certain concepts to the existing open world or the new zones that you're going to be creating for the next expansion, I think these concepts flow a lot better into the game when you do that than when you just separate them and make it feel like a completely different game with the same battle system like they do with Eureka. So I'd still like to be able to have the option to do things like do my roulettes and make some progress. You know, maybe I just do maps and maybe the items are in the maps, like we've had that before. And I'd prefer just to have the variety of options. And even within Eureka, if there was just a variety of options, I'd be okay with it. So either or, I just like there to be a more engaging experience with the weapon. A grind fest, always, but a more choice-averse one. Question number 3. Good morning, Mr. Happy. It is not morning anymore, but I will still say good morning to you as well. Why is this off-center again? Every week. Last week I did the same thing, I just noticed. Good morning. Good morning. First time asking here, greetings from Peru. By the way, I saw you in the Twitch chat today. This person is asking a question, so thank you for coming by. With the recent unveiling of the Delve League and Path of Exile, I've been trying to theorize how an infinite scaling dungeon could work in 14. Recently found out WoW has a system for Mythic Plus. This is a question we get a lot, so I'm going to get to the big chunk right here. I've not played WoW and probably never will because I can't stand its graphics, so I don't know how the progression works in that game. But from what I have read, there seems to be more customization than in 14, where it feels like it barely matters at all and its only purpose is cosmetic. That is the reason I think even if they implemented an infinite scaling system, the rewards would be underwhelming because you should be too worried about making other content irrelevant. The solution for this could be adding extra stats to the drops from the system, but that only works within the system. Do you think that could be viable? So a lot of these do you think questions, again, I tend to say this when we get them. What do you think, or could they do this? Again, as not the developer of the game, these are, I guess, sort of unanswerable questions. Something that I like to reiterate when I do this, because anything could work in Final Fantasy XIV if they want it to work. Except for Eureka. Or at least it seems like it at this point. But do you think it could be viable? It's just not my decision. You know, anything can be viable if it's designed around the systems that Final Fantasy XIV has in place, or you develop new systems for it altogether. As for more customization, I see customization in MMOs in terms of stats for me. it depends on I guess the classes and the jobs or whatever you want to call them. Because most of the time, customization is a farce in actual MMOs. Now, in Path of Exile, there's usually builds people figure out and that people copy. But generally, there's this sense of exploration in terms of builds, whereas with MMOs, you generally just find out what is best in a given situation and only use that. Now, sometimes you're able to make adjustments for things like AoE, or adjustments for things like bosses with no ads or bosses with ads. Like, there's at least that degree, and for us, that's the kind of customization we really don't have. But just adding extra stats or customization is just never a concern for me with armor, because ultimately whatever is best is what you're going to use in the given situation where it is best. So all you ever actually accomplish is making it so you can never do all of these things at once. Whereas in Final Fantasy XIV, while there are some jobs with better AoE, some jobs with more single target, some jobs with more utility, some jobs with more damage, whatever it is, it's just like everyone still can kind of do everything. So I feel like in order to make it so we have situations like that, where you have these multiple builds, you kind of have to limit the jobs a little bit on purpose, and then make it so you have to make choices, like with role actions, for example, when you want to do something basic like provide more AoE to the team, or provide more crowd control, or just whatever examples. You understand what I mean, I hope. So as for the infinite scaling thing in terms of customization, I don't think you necessarily need to worry too much about this infinite scaling dungeon, because no matter what, you can't have infinitely scaling gear. It just can't happen in an MMO. You just can't make it so no matter what, you go up to this insane level, and as far as you're able to go is as far as the armor starts getting better. It completely throws things like world races and senses of progression. It throws them all into like this really weird cycle. However, the idea of Mythic Plus and the idea of more interesting dungeons is something I've heavily advocated for over the years. I think their deep dungeon system is greatly underutilized when they could be doing things like PvE dungeon ladders, seasons, things that, mentioning Path of Exile, should be familiar, with them adding new effects that can appear, and then when you add a new deep dungeon, you innovate on the system a little bit as a whole, and then you continue to add things like, oh, there's this new debuff, there's this new buff you can encounter, there's this new NPC you can encounter, and I know it's not that simple, but I feel like you can take a deep dungeon and make it run as a piece of content for a lot longer outside of just making it a viable or one of the best leveling options in the game. Question number 4. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hey. What are your thoughts on a rumor that seems to be floating around from recent interviews that 14 was only intended to last 10 years and will reach its end in 5 years' time with the conclusion of the Ashen arc? So this isn't so much rumors as so much as it is interpretation of things they've been saying for the last 5 years. First of all, let me finish this. Do you think there's any truth to this? They'll just end the arc and move on to a new story arc. So Yoshi P has been saying, probably since the first year of A Realm Reborn, maybe even before that they have a minimum 10-year plan for Final Fantasy XIV. Mostly because after 10 years, the tech that is involved in a game, the graphics, the engine itself, generally these things are dated in 10 years. And we see that with MMOs that are 10 years old, and if you look 10 years back from those MMOs, there are systems in those games that aren't considered modern anymore, and it becomes harder and harder to maintain an audience against things that keep getting, a new engine for a new game, for a new single player, there's always new stuff, and you're basically having it piled on top of your game in terms of like people's interests. So people are like, well, this just came out, so I won't play this. This just came out, so I won't play this. And revisiting old games is harder to do when it's online and always updating, because you're not going back to something that you loved before the way it was. It's completely changed since the way you experienced it when you first thought of it. So that's why they say they have a 10-year plan. Will the Ashen arc end at 10 years? I'd say that's a safe bet. If I were to say yes or no and I'd have to bet on it, I'd say that's probably safe, because they're not going to make a plan for 10 years and then not finish the at least one of the arcs of the game, one of the most major arcs. They can't literally be building this Ashen arc and then at some point they just go, well, okay, our game is like at a point where we kind of just need to end it, so let's pull the trigger and end it, because you have to consider all the things they've evolved up to at that point. So I don't think it's necessary. First of all, it doesn't mean the end of Final Fantasy XIV. The only thing that will end 14 is a lack of players, like altogether, like it just isn't making money. That's the only way that ever ends as a whole. For the Ashen arc, though, I can see that ending in 10 years. I mean, that's a pretty lengthy arc you have to consider with how involved they are with everything. But they have also said in interviews that the Ashen arc will end at some point, and when it does, they will, if people are still interested in the game, then they will come up with more stuff. They will come up with more story. They will come up with a new arc. So the answer is kind of all over the place, but generally yes for the Ashen arc potentially ending at the 10-year mark, but no to that being the end of 14. Question number 5. Hey, I'm earlier this week. Yes, only number 5. Hi, and take my on Calamity. My take on Calamity in 14 would mean, remember Dalamud? 14 already had a Calamity and killed an entire game, but for otherwise I agree revisiting old areas in some way. I mean, we can swim and coast it also. Okay, I don't even know what you tried to say in there, but that's probably because it's referring to last week, and I don't remember a fucking word that I said last week. Kind of confusing playstyle question disguised as a joke. When the tank shouldn't tank, not a joke, and when Dalamud got bigger. I remember that. When the tank shouldn't tank, you know, I guess a kind of confusing playstyle question. What's the best skill to do in an AoE situation in a dungeon? Answer, AoE limit break. Do you agree? No, see, that's not really the best skill necessarily. It does the most damage, but I mean, this is kind of like you said, it's kind of an unanswerable question. You've kind of already said that it's disguised as a joke. Because the limit break provides the most, but I always think of Holy, especially pre-nerf Holy, as the best AoE ability in the game. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some awesome stuff like, you know, Dark Arts Abyssal Drain, where you just heal up a massive amount. There's, you know, any of the DPS with Bloodbath, or the pre-Bloodbath removal on Warrior, going in and like Bloodbath with Steel Cyclone or Decimate, and you just heal for all this damage. Nice motorcycle. And I think of those situations, and again, pre-nerf Holy, before the damage had the fall off, where you just constant damage and stun, and it was so good. For me, it's probably still my favorite though. One that's kind of taken, I guess, kind of as a favorite, just I don't know, for no real like super good reason, but the earthly star for Astro, I don't know, it's so satisfying to me when you use the earthly star correctly. It's too bad the damage numbers don't like pop up like they do when you would do a normal AoE, because it's considered as a damage source from a pet, which is why we've had some issues in Eureka as well. And so you don't get to really see that, but I still know, I don't know, something about me inside feels the impact of that fully powered earthly star, and that just feels so good. Question number 6. What's up, Pap? What's up? Regarding a conversation on one of your streams, there was a discussion about the next Omega tier and if Sephiroth could be included. How do you feel about 14's devs including bosses like that in 14? Do you think they're doing this now just to get this type of fan service out of the way so they can focus on more original content? They're good with fitting these bosses into the current 14 lore, but I feel like with Ritter on a Lighthouse and Omega, they're seeming to be more of a theme park than more original content than what we got in A Realm Reborn and Heavensward. I'm hoping this is just their way of satisfying people to fight past FF character bosses. So I'm personally not a super big fan of like final bosses from previous games, specifically from Final Fantasies, I guess, 5 and on. Final Fantasies 1, 2, 3, and 4 kind of don't have super interesting bosses. 5, you could even argue, Exdeath is, I'd say he's the first boss that starts to be interesting, even though he's still kind of generic. And then 6 is where they really started to give bosses characters and deeper motives that weren't just destroy the world or I'm an evil asshole. And that's where it starts to get weirder and weirder to add them. With Omega, I don't really like Omega as a whole, because I don't like that it's just like, well, you know, we need some excuse to put these bosses into the game because people are always asking for them, and this is our excuse. It creates kind of like, generally like 3 bosses out of a raid tier aren't super interesting. Now all 4 bosses aren't interesting to me because they don't matter in any scope of the content. With the final tier of Omega, that should change. Omega is, you know, is and should be and better fucking be the final boss of his own raid tier. So but all the other bosses are so inconsequential. Like, you could literally just give me the cutscenes with no bosses and it would make no difference to my gameplay experience, and that's something that I don't really enjoy. However, I feel like they're not just trying to get it out of the way, it's just that's what Final Fantasy is. Final Fantasy is a franchise that's been built on creating original versions of old references, and as every game has come out, more and more of those have stacked up on top of each other. Final Fantasy IX was built on the prospect of combining certain elements from all the older Final Fantasy games and putting them into a single game, and it works in a lot of ways. It's just how the franchise was built. And I think that while 14 has kind of always had a light grasp on it, this expansion, they're really trying to pull it all in. I mean, Ivalice, the raid series, that's been fantastic. That's been a very well done. It's very reminiscent of the Crystal Tower series, which I also thought was super well done. It took characters that had no relevance to me, even in the games that they were from, because they were just so two-dimensional. And it created this entire integration into Final Fantasy XIV that felt like natural and interesting to learn about. The fall of the Allegan civilization, their emperor, their deal with the world of darkness, learning what the world of darkness itself even was through other methods. Like, it's all been connected and interesting. And when they do that with bosses, I don't mind. It's just when Omega does this tournament of power crap that I really just lose all interest. It is a theme park, and he even said in a recent interview it will continue to be a theme park, and if anything, it will be more of a theme park going forward. But I just hope they never do anything like Omega. Once it's done, great. I hope they never do anything like it again. Question number 7. Hey, Mr. Happy. A7 here. Oh, look, it's question number 7. It's A7. Hey. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. You doing all right. Have a bonus to physical jump in your favorite game for a day. You can repaint. You repaint if you die. A bonus to physical jump into... Oh, I don't want to physically jump into any game I play. Dude, all the games I play have got fucked up worlds. I don't want to live in that place. But luckily, you're letting me respawn. So, that works. So I used to play Ragnarok in 2008. Have you played it? I did. Not a huge fan. In fact, I met my current girlfriend of over 5 years in Ragnarok Online 2. She's the only good thing that came out of that game. Moving on. I liked leveling in that game because there was a repeatable quest that was available for each level group, like 10, 20, 20, 10 to 20, and 20 to 35, and so forth. The reason I bring it up is because I'm watching your thoughts on Pagos, which I'm soon to dive in, and you talked about the pace of the game because of the chain system. Aside from the challenge log, wouldn't it be more social and beneficial for us to kill 30 plus of X monsters or monster types and name for your level group? Because you move on to a second question, I guess I'll answer this first one. Just creating goals that allow you, that more encourage social interaction as opposed to, this grind heavy with very little time to talk in between killing monsters attitude that Pagos is right now would be very, very welcome. So, having a series of quests between a level group is perfect. Somebody in my chat brought up Final Fantasy XI because this is so heavily modeled after Final Fantasy XI, at least on the surface level, but not, I guess, when you get deeper into the systems. Final Fantasy XI, a few years, I'd say probably like 6-7 years into its development, they added something called the Fields of Valor. Basically, they were books that existed out in the world that gave you objectives based on the area that you were finding them in. Grounds tomes were underground dungeon versions of those as well. And so, for example, it could be like kill 4 of this enemy and 2 of this enemy, and when you do that, you get this bonus. You get bonus EXP, you get tabs, which you can use to, put self buffs on yourself or teleport around. And I feel like that system as a whole, that person was, onto something. If you are going to take 11 and use it kind of as a base model, I think you should take everything that it did. Because over the years, Final Fantasy XI added a lot of quality of life stuff because its own systems were just so unintuitive. And if they're changing their own game and their own systems to be more modern, they're doing what they can to keep up, then going back to this old system with Eureka, where it's literally just killing mobs to spawn NMs, you might have interesting ways of spawning the NMs. You might have specific conditions. You might be proud that people are, they have to take this time to figure it out. But the core system there is just lacking. It's bare bones, and as on purpose as it is, it's also not a good idea. You can have those things there, and you can have systems in place to back them up. The ability to hunt for specific mobs for bonuses, for example, which is what Fields of Valor did and does. It's what hunts do currently in our game. When you use the hunt board, leave quests allow you to create your own objectives out in the world in designated areas, and that's a good thing. It's still the same concept. You're just killing tons of enemies. But if you take the systems in your game and apply them to this, you can make that more interesting. You can just make it so they have to follow the rules that this zone has set in place. And so the thing you're suggesting, I would very much enjoy, or at least I would appreciate the addition of. Second question, kind of weird, but I'm semi-antisocial. Very antisocial right here, believe it or not. I don't choose to be, but apparently that's my life. What's your recommendation for not being antisocial? I'm in an FC. I got 100 plus friends on the game, but doing anything with them feels non-existent. I am very much I know tons of people and I never want to ask them to do things kind of guy. Mostly because, I don't know, for me it's a little different because I do it within my industry. I guess a great example, and this is another motorcycle. A great example is, when Final Fantasy 15 Comrades came out, the DLC that allowed you to team up in a multiplayer setting, I was just going through and playing. Maybe some people in my chat would hop in for a mission, or I'd open up with like a password or something. But eventually, my buddy, the number one Alex, he asked me, "Hey, dude, do you want to play Comrades?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." And then he invited a few people, and I got to play with, I think it was me, him, Strippin. I can't remember the other guy because I didn't know him very well. And I never really told them this, but I really appreciated that, because I would have never in a million years gone to Alex or Strippin or the other guy and been like, "Hey, you want to play Comrades?" I would have never done it. It's just not in me. And it's not a good thing. It's a very bad thing that I haven't been able to overcome, even after all these years. And if you meet me in person at an event like PAX West, I'm usually like, "Hey," like super weird, because I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to meet someone who I've never met before without some sort of common ground being established. Yes, the common ground could be Final Fantasy 14, but without knowing the person, there's just, I don't know, there's like this mental block. So I can't even give you advice on that. My only advice is, do what I do. Just don't stop talking. Eventually somebody will agree with something you say, and then you'll have someone who's like-minded. You'll annoy a shit ton of people like I do, but at least you'll meet some people along the way that you can consider friends and generally ask to do things with. Question number 8. What's happening, Haps? Nothing much. I'm doing alright. Long-time viewer, supporter, first-time asker. So have a bonus of a dish of your choice prepared by a Gordon Ramsay on me. Note, commas are important, folks. Oh man, what dish would that even? You know what? I want he himself, if he's cooking it, I'd take a beef Wellington. I had the opportunity to get one at his restaurant at the last Fan Fest, and I didn't do it because I was like, there's so many other good things. I don't think this is my time to try beef Wellington. The other person who got it though told me it was great. So anyway, the Rising event has always had people watching for hints and teasers, especially with a looming expansion on the horizon. The event before Stormblood dropping Samurai and Red Mage. So just to be clear, that was actually 3 events ago. So that was the same year Heavensward released, I'm pretty sure, because last year was Cheap Dungeon, the year before that was the Bugs, and the year before that was when they let us into the developers floor. I think that was the 2-year anniversary is when they let us into the developers floor. What was the 1st-year anniversary? Now I don't even remember that. And yeah, that was so long ago. So at that event, I look into the past, monsters dropped everywhere, Time Mage, Healer, Beastmaster, joking, of course, though if that ends up being the case, totally called it. But as for my question, branching off the time magic thing, with it being canon to the world of 14, if you had a choice of a period in time in the lore that you could have us go, eventually, for whatever plot reasons, where and when would you choose? Dude, I've been collecting these Allegan tombstones. Why even read them? I just want to go there. Go to the fall of the Allegan Empire. I don't feel like there's another period in time that's interesting enough for me to go to. There's the War of the Magi, I guess, but I don't know. There's also Gaug. Gaug is also a possibility, the origin of the Garleans, but I have to go with Allegans. They're so integrated into everything that picking anything else just doesn't seem like a wise choice. Getting to see the original summoning of Bahamut, the Crystal Tower, and the earthquake and the end of the world. Although we probably wouldn't actually get to see that part, because if we did, we'd have to get the hell out of there as soon as possible. So there's also just the issue, man. Going back in time is it's a rough concept. I didn't like it in Final Fantasy 11. I'm not a fan of the Wings of the Goddess story at all. I'm not a fan of it in World of War. I'm not a fan of time travel. So going into the future, I actually am okay with. Going into the past is always just really weird to me, because there's just so many problems that should arise that in ways don't, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. But if I had to pick a time, Allegans. All right, question number 9. Hello, Mr. Happy. Greetings from Brazil. Thank you for all the Extreme and Savage guides. Thank you for watching them, and hopefully you're doing all right. I know you'll say I can't comment on anything, hasn't been confirmed, but I'd like to ask for your personal thoughts on something I've been considering about Eureka. Don't roll your eyes, please. And I'm not sure how much of this has been confirmed, but you'll be able to clarify. I gather the zones' names come from Greek, Anamos meaning wind, Pagos meaning ice, which are zones' themes. My bet would be the 3rd zone would be fire, which is something other people have been saying, calling it Pyros, since those 3 elements complete a rock, paper, scissors mechanic for half of our Magia board. That said, consider this. There's still 3 elements that could be applied to new zones, Geos, Hydros, and Kuranos. The story progresses following a slow pace is unlikely to conclude unless they suddenly haste things up in the 3rd zone. Our elemental level cap probably won't go above 50 at the end of the 3rd zone, placing it far from our level 70 cap outside Eureka. Based on this, I would assume the dev have a bigger plan for extending Eureka until the end of 5.x, implementing another 3 zones, continuing story at a reasonable pace, and ultimately reaching the elemental cap of 80. Despite being mostly speculation, do you believe this is their plan? Is there enough strength on Eureka to grant it that long a life? I sure fucking hope not. And how much do you hate the idea of relics being attached? So I'll quell this very quickly. It's been something that's been spoken about a lot. Obviously, we have the 6 elements. However, last I recall, it was hard confirmed there are 4 zones that are going to be. We have, I agree, Pyros is probably the last one outside of the Citadel we have in the middle. The Citadel in the middle is likely to be one of its own zones. I don't know what their exact plan is for that, but I sincerely doubt, A, that they would continue it into 5.x. I don't see any reason to do it, especially based on the feedback they've probably been receiving. If that was their plan, I guarantee you it's probably no longer their plan. And the story moving slowly, it kind of reminds me of like the first tier in a raid, in all of our raids, where there hasn't really been a whole lot going on, except that it's gone through 2 zones at this point. We've learned 2 major things throughout the 2 zones. I won't say what they are, but the second one ends in a really weird cliffhanger that I don't even fully understand, and I can only interpret in a very particular way. But no, they're not going to move it into 5. I'll say that with confidence. Not going to move it into 5.x. The story will probably conclude this expansion, and for the love of God, please do not do anything like Eureka going to 5.x. I'm sure there's ways to do it right. I said the same thing about Diadem. I just don't want to see it tried anymore. Just move in a different direction. Find something else that you want to innovate on in your game that isn't trying to un-innovate your game, which is pretty much what Eureka is. Question number 10. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hope you're having a good day. Little tired, but otherwise doing okay. My last question I asked about the timing of the next expansion. I thought of a follow-up. I'm curious when you think we'll start seeing a trailer. Trailers first. I think this is the same answer to what you asked me last week. Generally, expansion announcements always come with FanFests. So with that, there's 2 answers. The first FanFest will have probably about a 2 to 2.5 minute teaser, whereas the last FanFest will probably have an extended trailer. This is what they did with Heavensward and Stormblood. With Heavensward, what they did was they showed, I guess, the very last scene of the trailer, because the very last scene specifically shows Ishgard and us preparing for the battle. And with Stormblood, they only showed the events in Rhalgrs for the first part of the trailer. When the full Stormblood trailer came out, that's when they showed us Kugane, that's when they showed us Samurai. For Heavensward, they showed us the entire first part of the trailer. They tacked that on. So that's what the schedule's looking like. First FanFest teaser, probably 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, or as long as 2.5 minutes, and then FanFest in March will probably be a full trailer. So that's what my predictions are going to be. Question number 11. Hey, Mr. H. Hey, what's going on? Short question this week. What's your opinion on tattoos and the lack thereof of 14? Do you think it's something we'll see added to the creators sometime down the line, or am I doomed to wear the South Seas talisman forever? So I'm personally someone who doesn't care too much about the visuals of my character. I'm just not someone who's into customization and more customization options. However, I do believe that if something would make more players happy, they should do it. I mean, who cares? I'm one of those people you literally can't cater to in MMOs. I'm impossible. I'm self-admitted of it. You literally cannot do it. There will always be too little content for me. I will always have a negative opinion about something, and I don't care about a lot of the little cosmetic glamour things. I'm impossible. I don't do crafting or gathering very much either. Like, you can't cater to me. It's impossible. So if they can cater to more people than me, I'll want them to do it. So I think if you want people on tattoos, then that should be something that they could focus on, that the visual team should be able to focus on. As for whether or not I think we'll see any more, they've been pretty adamant that they're not planning on doing much in the form of new character customization. However, who's to say that more tattoos isn't a thing they can't do? That's a little different than adding things like new eyes and new faces, I guess, depending on how it's coded in the first place. So if people want it, then they should do it. Simple as that. Question number 12. Hello, Haps. I hope you're doing well and feeling a lot better. Long-time viewer, first-time askers with a bonus of 2 free cruise tickets for you and your lady to relax. I would not be relaxed on a cruise. I get motion sick, and when I'm not near my work, I'd have to have good internet on that cruise ship. I have 2 questions this week, one longer than the other. I play Samurai and Monk mostly, but it seems a lot of stacks want me as Dragoon for meta comp. I'm not a Dragoon hater, and I can play the job. I just don't necessarily enjoy playing it. I know what really matters is how well you play, but that isn't enough for all groups. Do you think it would be a good idea for Square to give an ability to allow bards and machinists to switch ammo types before a fight? For example, giving bards blunt arrows for blunt resist down and serrated arrows for slashing resist down. Obviously normal piercing arrows for machine, blank rounds for blunt, slicing rounds for slashing, and the normal piercing rounds. Allowing for a more ranged allowing for the ranged melee to attack, I know you mean range DPS, to attack any of the applied debuffs. That would only leave Battle Litany for Dragoons in terms of raid utility, and the eye. Don't forget the eye. I love the eye. But what I can believe give other jobs a better spot rating wise. What are your thoughts? So I'm of the opinion that generally damage type resistance down effects like disembowel and that specific effect on Dragon Kick and the slashing demons, I hate all of them. They're all there for no arbitrary reason other than to create a meta, because that's all they do. They force jobs to synergize with one another, and then whichever one synergizes the most is the most useful one. I mean, with the piercing debuff, the Dragoon's the only one who can provide it for Bard and Machinist. So that's what your question is trying to tackle. For monks, there's no one else to share it with because the Black Mage auto attacks aren't a concern. And then for slashing, most of the jobs have it. Paladin and Dark Knight don't, but Warrior, Ninja, and Samurai all have it to make sure that they can provide it for the remaining two who don't. And if you don't have those things, it feels terrible. Most people just kind of take it for granted because almost every group has at least somebody who can do the slashing debuff. You know, very few are like Dark Paladin and then no Samurai or Ninja. Like, it happens, but it's not the most common thing. But with Machinist and Bard, the fact that they're locked in, I mean, I like your suggestion. If we're going to absolutely keep damage types in the game, I like your suggestion because it makes it so that these two, they're still not self-dependent, which kind of sucks, but at least they're adaptable. And I think that that is an important thing to allow within compositions. So I don't dislike your idea. If they were to leave it as it is, I think it's a good one. However, I would prefer that they just get rid of it. I don't know what you could do. So that's the problem with job synergies, is there's always going to be ones that are better. You can't make them, they're always going to be something off. So I don't really know what to say. It's an unanswerable question for a different reason than the previous unanswerable questions, but oh man, it just gives me a headache thinking about how annoying it would be to try and find something that settles there. There's always going to be meta, even if you make adjustments. So I'll just say yes to adding that just for the sake of adding it. And then you have a second question. How do you as monk use perfect balance? I use it wrong. I'll tell you that much. My monk, I haven't spent much time. Around the time the Tornado Kick opener started coming out was around the time I went through some very serious personal life things. And I still kind of deal with those off stream whenever I'm not recording YouTube videos. And sometimes it gets to me mentally and I can't record YouTube videos. That's why you've been seeing this such inconsistency for me as of late. And so the thing I need to practice most on Monk before 4.4 is actually doing things that, you know, are considered modern Monk. Yeah, I don't care. I can get a 98% on 05 and 06 without having to do the fucking opener. There's no reason not to do the opener. But for perfect balance, using it after a Tornado Kick is pretty much the go-to way. Or if you're 100% going to lose stacks and you, for some reason, won't have Fist of Wind, then those are situations where you can consider using it. But it should be your, hey, I just used Tornado Kick, let me get my stacks back method. If not, then the other way around is to do that with perfect balance, is to get your stacks and then use Fist of Wind to get them back, but I'm pretty sure the other way around is better. So that's it. That would be the thing. Tornado Kick, especially if it lines up with some of your buffs, and then perfect balance and get your stacks back. Question number 13. Howdy, Mr. Happy. This is the last question on the forums, by the way, so howdy. As of late, I've noticed the moon has gotten larger. Really? I have not noticed that. And the blood moon seems to be showing it more than it used to. Do you think this means anything, or the moon is just doing moon things? So I'm going to say two things. One, I have to go look, because I sure as hell haven't noticed this, but I also don't pay attention. Two, the moon doesn't just do moon things. The moon is very important in our game, and it has been forever. Dalamud was thought to be a moon, and it ended up being an Allagan machine to contain Bahamut. It was a prison. The other moon is Zodiark, most likely, or his prison. So our moons are just not really great moons. They're just kind of these dark secrets that we've kept. Assuming that our moon is actually Zodiark itself, or is actually his prison based on things that we saw back in 3.0. Why are there so many motorcycles today? So it actually is interesting because in Estinian's Tale from the Stormblood, there's reference of the Azure Skies, which we already know is Heavensward. There's reference of Crimson, which we already know is Stormblood. Now, we were all thinking the theme for the 4th expansion was going to be Violet. Our 4.4 patch is called Prelude to Violet. But Estinian talks about the darkness, or I guess he uses a different phrase. I could pull it up real quick while I'm thinking, but he basically refers to a darkness that's coming. Now, don't get me wrong, the theme of the next expansion could still be Violet. It is the color of the Garlean flag. It's the color of that area of the map. There's a lot of symbology or symbolism that already comes from the word Violet and the color overall. It's also the combination of red and blue, which happens to be, and considering it fits right in between where the continents are, makes perfect sense. But specifically, Estinian refers to the deepening black of twilight. Now, this is reinforced in The Rising with a certain line. I won't tell you exactly what. Now, the twilight itself can, I guess, be interpreted as violet, so it could be like a dark violet. But again, it's the idea of this looming darkness is becoming a more and more recurring theme. So if the moon is actually getting any bigger, or is actually kind of doing what you're saying it's doing, then a looming darkness coming from a moon makes a lot of sense, because what is a darkness that comes from the moon? What is the black of twilight from the moon? An eclipse. So something could be happening. I don't know what, but something's happening. Something is happening. I think it's most likely referring to the Ascians and their grip on Garlemald, making it so we're kind of coming to a head with the Ascians, maybe a little bit sooner than initially anticipated, or we're about to have a major conflict specifically with the Ascians, and Garlemald's going to be kind of the vessel for that. But something insane is happening. Also, Black of Twilight, Darkness, Gaius was the Black Wolf. So, just saying. I'm sorry, we don't know if it's him. I'm just saying. Anyway, that's going to be the last question for the forum. So thank you again for our questions that we've had this week. We are not going to be having questions from Twitch because I'm not live streaming right now. But before we get going, we have to make sure we thank our sponsors over on Patreon. We've had plenty of sponsors supporting the stream through #demonetize and supporting the channel through rough times for me as well. And I super appreciate all of you. Of course, we have our patron of light, Khuja Cross on Jenova. He has been an awesome supporter and has gone above and beyond over the last several months to make sure that I'm always feeling tippy-top. They also provide a screenshot for me to show on the screen. And again, they always provide me with like words of encouragement and making sure that I'm okay. Like, there's someone who truly cares about the channel and the direction. So really appreciate Khuja Cross from Jenova and their contribution as the patron of light. As for the rest of our sponsors, we have a ton. We have a ton of sponsors. We have standard sponsors, elite sponsors, and premium sponsors. So try to stick with me for this. So for our standard sponsors, we have Remil Gaming, we have the Sabo Empire, we have Mizra, Red Wings of Baron FC from Zalera, Fray Blackheart, Cidus, Oreo, and Shiva, Syd Hellwind of Gilgamesh, Afro Ninja from Malboro, Cheesecake from Leviathan, Sploda, That Lane Weeb, Ashen, Emiya of Cerberus, Argoti Tristam of Midgardsormr, Fafarian, Rendil, Giraffeswillrule, Stevie-Rex, Neon. Oh, for some reason I got lost in the names right there. Normally I end at Neon. It's because I have a new name and it threw me off. I have Nairik and Kaya Amatsuki of Midgardsormr. So thank you to our standard sponsors. We then have our elite sponsors. We have Senshi, Shinka, Crimson, and Talvia Swift of Coral, Just One Fox, Shadow Link on the Tonberry server, Dom, Asuka Wake from Jenova, Lemillionella of Midgardsormr, Sarah and the Avalanche family on Malboro, Janhyua Yotsuyu, almost got that wrong, Kifka and the Grey Eagles on Exodus, Dark Graver, Katayoshi from Khuja, Skia Symphonia from Ragnarok, Rah Xephon from Exodus, Finally Westos, the Purple Warrior, Yadric Red Steel on Exodus, Lexxie Valentine, the Mantaru and the Rivivus FC from Zodiark, Sour Cream and Chives from Jenova, Rynoet Chikara, Goisha Valfor of Siren, Hirschfirst of Fairy, Phoenix Down FC on Goblin, and Saren from Zodiark. Another motorcycle. Jesus Christ. Then we have our premium sponsors. We have Casual Heroes FC on Midgardsormr. We have Sean, Kana Uzuki on the Jenova server, Starla on Coral, Sathal, Sarah Frost from Behemoth, Diablo, Holy Tabasco, Red Thorn Asura, Kurenai Oni, Asken Hawk from Shiva, Crash015, Mustang, the Serenity FC on Ultros, Kat Kazuma, Serial Kira on Cactar, Ignis Fairgun from Diablos, Balestra of Fanfrit, Noct Quarters from Excalibur, Probus Moonscar, Private Mikey, Spike, Nani Kirasami, Rudy Rudiger, Tin Colossus, Killer Hackman, Royal Jr., and Kiltastic Jones. A lot of names. Thank you to all of you who have continued to support through #demonetized and through a bit of a slump from me personally. That's going to be a wrap for this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. If you have a question for Mondays with Mr. Happy, go to the forums that's in the description of the video and ask a question there. I'm at least guaranteed to see it. If I deem that it's like something that's super inappropriate, not even like a bad question, but it's just like a mega inappropriate, that's the only way it doesn't get asked or answered there. So that's the best that I can do for you. Other than that, be on the lookout for all those things I said. A Maple Story 2 video. I actually expect Final Fantasy 11 videos sometime in the next week as well. Some Final Fantasy 14 stuff, especially concerning the Rising and concerning the live letter this Friday, 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. State of the Realm is going to be late this week, not going to be live till either Saturday evening or Sunday sometime during the day. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for me. Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy, and I will see all of you in the next one. Until then, take care.